This video is on the different forms that money can take. A real brief history of what we would call money. Thousands of years ago, there wasn't much money in circulation. I mean, people, the tribes, the groups of people just didn't need money. They trade, they subsistence farm, so there's no need for money. So there's very, very little trade. But what you did is you had to try to figure out, how many chickens equals a cow or whatever it is you're trying to trade for. Then eventually some money started to come in. China was one of the very earliest peoples to start using money as a currency in trade. So then trade was able to increase because now I can sell my chickens for money and buy the cow instead of having to go to the cow farmer and make an exchange. Then more money came into effect, and today most people in the world, I would imagine, if maybe not most, but a lot, use money, and it's much easier to trade. You trade your labor for money, and you go and use that money to buy whatever stuff that you want. So what our money is today is what's called fiat money. And fiat money means that any money that is worthless except as money. So example is the bills that we use, the coins that we use. If the American government wasn't around, the dollar bills would be worthless. You might as well burn them because that's the only use you're going to get out of them. So they're really worthless except as money. Commodity money is any form of money that is useful as something else. So for example, when cows were used, even seashells in terms of looking pretty, gold, for example, is a commodity money because you can do other things with it. It's not just like dollars where you use it for exchange and that's it. Cows you can milk, you can get food from. Gold you can melt down and make jewelry with, so it's useful somewhere else, and so we call that commodity money. So fiat money, again, is what is backed by the government. So kind of what this says right here, the only difference between these two notes, the Monopoly dollar and the George Washington dollar, is your belief that one has more value than the other. And that's really what backs the dollar. There's nothing else behind it other than to say that, well, everybody values this as currency, so it's worth something. Commodity money, there's been lots of examples over the years. Cows, animals have been used as medium of exchange to trade with. Gold, again, is useful elsewhere. Foodstuffs have been used. Tea leaves have been used in the past, and tobacco leaves as well as commodity money because they're useful somewhere else. You can eat the food, you can make jewelry out of gold, and cows you can obviously eat and get milk from. Making the transition, there are a few forms that money can take. There are more than just M1 and M2, but we're going to focus on these two at this level. So M1 refers to anything that's money right now. M2 is not quite money now, but it could be money in the future that you can use right now. If you take a look at the chart over here, you notice that the actual currency, what we consider money, the money in your pocket, makes up a very low amount of what the actual money supply is. So the currency we carry around is a very small portion. And this might be true of you, it may not be true, but the money that you have in savings accounts, or at least the people in the United States have in savings accounts, you can see is much larger, and probably the largest form of the M1 and M2, as you can see in its form. So most people hold a lot of their money in savings, they walk around with a little bit as currency, but that just kind of shows you the balance between M1 and M2. So M1 is money that can be used as a medium of exchange. In other words, when you go to McDonald's, what could you pay with? And so when you think about what you could pay with, that's what M1 is. What can you pay with right now that you don't have to exchange into something else? Now, one thing to note, credit cards don't count as money at all. And the reason is credit cards is like, or using a credit card is kind of like a little loan. The credit card is not backed by money that you have in an account. Instead, you're creating money, so the credit card says, yep, Mr. Null is good to buy McDonald's, so go ahead and give him the McDonald's and we'll pay you. And then Mr. Nella will pay me later when he has the money, or when I shift money from my checking account to pay for my credit card. So M1 is like things like money, check cards, checking accounts, what economists call checkable deposits, anything you can write a check against, because you can pay with checks, and checking cards, which I already said above. And here are the components again of M1. When we just look at this, currency makes up 48% of what people use as money right now. Any sort of demand deposits or checkable deposits make up roughly, the rest of the 50%. And then there's some money that's called traveler's checks. We won't really worry about that, but that's something you can use as exchange right now. M2 is money that is used as a store of value. Money that people are storing for future consumption. So anywhere you'd save it. And if you take a look, here's M1, checkable deposits and currency. And it's estimated that somewhere around $812 billion is in circulation at any one time, at least right now when this chart came out. Now M2, if you notice, includes everything in M1. So M1 is listed at about 1.6 trillion, and M2 is somewhere around $8.1 trillion. So M2 includes everything in M1, so there's that little slice of the pie there, as well as some other things. So it includes things like savings accounts, money market accounts, small time deposits is another phrase that they like to use as economists, and so that's what makes up M2. You're going to store the money for later. Now, if you've never used a savings account or never really thought of it, one thing I want you to know is that when you put money into a savings account, and you might say, well, Mr. Noel, I can use that money to pay for stuff in McDonald's. All I have to do is go to the ATM, take the money out, and then go to McDonald's. But that's exactly the point of M2, is that you can't, with the money in your savings account, right this instant pay for anything. You do have to exchange it out, go to the ATM or go to the bank, take the money out. Then you've transferred money from M2, from the savings account, into, if you took it out in money, into currency as circulation. So that changeover means that you're taking money out of M2, and again, not really, because M1 is part of M2, but you're transferring it into M1 instead of your savings account. So as review, what's always larger, M1 or M2? That's right, M2. M2 because M2 includes everything in M1 plus some more stuff. So now, see if you can think about it. During a recession, what do you think would happen to M1 and M2? So is something going to grow larger? Is something going to get smaller? Think about what M1 and M2 is all about and try to come up with, a reason of what's going to happen to M1 or M2 during a recession. When people are, I've talked about it in the past, and I almost gave you the answer there, but try to come up with something. So key elevator, waiting music, or you can make your own, hit pause, try to think of something. So during a recession, M1 shrinks. When you think about it, people start saving during a recession. So they're not going to have as much currency in their pocket. They're going to put much more money in savings because they're afraid of what's coming. They're pessimistic about the future, so they start saving money more as a store of value. And so this affects the circular flow of money, as not as much is spent because of an uncertain future. And so that's one of the reasons that exacerbates or makes worse the recession, is that people start saving more, so there's less money in circulation, and that's really what, M1 is really that flow of money through the economy.